Hello and welcome to the 8th and final session on our Screen Reader Savvy Series 2024 refresh. I hope you were able to watch some of the troubleshooting videos ahead of this one that were marked as supplements, because that is a lot of the information that will be addressed in this installment. So let's go ahead and get started. This presentation is going to contain a lot of tips. And here are some general troubleshooting tips for you that might help you get started if you notice that there's an issue. Firstly, there's a Getting Help section of this presentation that how to get help in the various screen readers. Look at that area and that section of this presentation because a lot of your questions may be answered there. Another one is Google is your friend. Chances are, if you have that question, there are other people that also have that question. And there's a good chance that you can find something online that will answer the specific question that you have. Additionally, there are many Facebook groups and email groups that are for screen reader users, and often belonging to these groups can save time and allow for networking opportunities while you're troubleshooting common problems. So if you're on an email list, if you have a question, you could send it out to the list and someone can give you, it might take a bit, but they'll get back to you and give you some resources most of the time, or tell you some just general ideas of how to resolve the issue that you're having. Facebook groups are also great for that, and there's different ways of doing that. You can also, if it's a specific question that you're having regarding the screen reader, always feel free to, again, refer to their Getting Help sections or call them or get on their website, things like that. That usually works, especially with JAWS. NVDA less so, but that's why we've got those other Facebook and email groups that you can belong to, and that helps a lot. One of the big ones that we see a lot is volume. When you can't hear the screen reader, but you know it's there and you know it's turned on, the first thing you need to do is check the sound output and the volume of the screen reader in the volume mixer. And there's other ways to do this, but I kind of like the volume mixer. So what you can do is press the start menu and type volume mixer. It can also be accessed from the system tray by activating the application menu while the volume button is in focus. Another one that's good is not only checking the volume of the screen reader in comparison to other applications that might be running. So if you look here on this screenshot, I show that NVDA is turned up all the way. Also, so is my system sounds and my Google Chrome. So a really good way to do some testing is to just go to YouTube and see if a video plays. If the video doesn't play and it shows that your volume is all the way up, there may be a hardware problem with your computer. And you might need to look for some outside assistance there, but this is a good place to start. Another one, maybe it's the browser. If you're having difficulty accessing the site, especially one that you have accessed before and you're having problems, it could be an issue related to whether the browser was updated. Has it been updated recently? The update could have caused the problem, or the problem could also be because you haven't updated. So just there's two sides to that coin, and updating the browser frequently can be important, but it can also break accessibility. And there really isn't a consistent answer for this. A lot of it is common sense, troubleshooting, trial and error, all of those things that take time that we might not have the time for. One good way is to stop automatically updating your browser. Because if you're using it a lot and it's being automatically updated, that may, again, cause issues. If your computer or your item is being controlled by your admin, like your work or school, it's very possible that you cannot disable this. So you might need to contact your IT department, but search the web for how to stop automatically updating the browser that you are using, because there are so many of them. Some people have a preference for Edge, some people have a preference for Chrome. Definitely take a look on that. Another option is consider using a different browser just to see if the small change has any effect. If it does, it's your browser screen reader combo, and that could be the issue. And you may need to just use a different browser occasionally or use the other screen reader. I mean, if you can and if it's possible. There's, again, a lot of factors to consider. So another one is deleting cookies and clearing the cache. Sometimes browser performance can be affected by cookies and the browser cache that is storing all of that stuff. It could even be that returning the browser to its default settings will resolve the issue. Again, search the web on how to do that for your particular browser. Uh, Including that information here would be quite lengthy, and frankly, it changes so often that how to best access it, it's probably best to just not give direct instructions other than to say, get some help on it, use your search tools. And as noted previously, it's possible that you may need to contact your IT department and explain the situation and get some help, either clearing the cache or deleting the cookies. Those are some other things that may improve your performance. A big one is website accessibility. If you can't get it to work, is it the website? Websites must be designed from the ground up by developers to be accessible. This means the web designer will have built in the elements into the website, such as headings, frames, and other navigable objects. Screen readers can identify the coding that was used by the developers and navigate the sites according to that. Accessible sites are not always user-friendly. Those two terms are vastly different and they have very different meanings. If you have someone who is maybe a beginning screen reader user and a website that's a little more dense or complex, it might be hard for them and they might right away say, this is not accessible. I can't do it. And that might not necessarily be completely true. Accessible is a term that's defined according to specific accessibility standards, whether they pass the WCAG accessibility standards and guidelines. But just because it passes, it doesn't mean that your skill set is up to navigating that site. It's your responsibility as a screen reader user to know how to use the tool to make the most of it. So another one, how do I know a website is accessible? You cannot tell by looking. Some perfectly accessible websites look like they're not going to work with a screen reader. And there's the opposite that can also be true. Some perfectly good looking text-based websites look like they will work and they don't. So a lot of it is trial and error. But one way to tell if text can be selected letter by letter and text on the site is not a quote unquote picture, it's more likely to be accessible. The best way, another way, is to turn on the screen reader and try navigating by elements like the tab key, or headings with the H. Listen to see whether the screen reader echoes the content correctly. And of course, you can also open up the links list or the headings list or the elements list in NVDA to see what elements appear and whether they're named or whether they have the same name, link, stuff like that. If so, the site is probably navigable. So strategies for navigating unfamiliar websites go hand in hand as a general rule with determining whether the site is accessible. So as previously noted, navigating by links and headings can give you a lot of information and insight on how the website was put together or constructed. Another great way is to access the links list in JAWS or the elements list in NVDA and use the arrow keys to go up and down and determine how the site is laid out. We also, if you have looked at the videos that are supplements to this course that look at navigating websites and kind of some strategies, one way is to get the website to report information, like with JAWS. You can, when the page is refreshed or when it's opened originally, it will report some minimal information about how it's constructed and laid out. And you can do a JAWS key plus F1 to get that information in a virtual dialog. The same thing is not necessarily true for NVDA. At times, the user can be uncertain as to where the focus of the screen reader is on the page. And we looked at this too. Is it halfway down? Is it halfway up? Did it get bumped randomly somewhere else? A good strategy is to navigate to the top of the page and start to navigate again and see what happens. So Control plus Home will take you to the top page, and then start navigating by one element. Pick one. Heading, pick links, pick tables, whatever you want to get a feel for the layout of the page, and that will help you kind of narrow things down. So other strategies, frames and regions aren't really seen as much on websites as they used to be when they were like a lot more complex. They've become a little more simplified, but not like a ton. So there are ways to navigate large chunks of a website by region, which is the letter R, or by frame, which is the letter M. If regions and frames are labeled, it should be possible to identify where the main area of the site is from the label, and then navigate by a similar element like a heading or a link to kind of navigate within that larger chunk. So that happens a lot with websites that have a lot of advertisements. You can a lot of times press an R to navigate past that advertisement region and into a different region. And as I previously mentioned, JAWS plus F1 will have the screen reader echo page formatting. NVDA doesn't have an equivalent as of the moment. Optical character recognition is the method by which a program extracts text from a picture of text. In other words, it makes it possible for a screen reader to recognize and read the text. It's very helpful on websites where information is part of like a picture or in some PDFs. OCR is a common component of scanning software and PDF editing programs. It allows somebody to take a sheet of paper, scan it in a computer, and change or manipulate the text. Since screen readers like JAWS and NVDA can't read pictures, the information has to be in a text format or have text that can be read. Optical character recognition is something that is built in to many screen readers. It's actually, I believe it's now built into NVDA rather than having to install an add-on, but it's also a component of JAWS, and we're going to see that a little better later. It's also a component of any PDF specific software like Adobe, for example. If you open an Adobe PDF and you're running a screen reader, it will recognize that and will very likely offer to do OCR on a document that is not currently readable. That's one component of reading a PDF. JAWS convenient OCR versus OCR in a PDF. This is important to know. It's important to understand the difference between the OCR that JAWS performs and the OCR that's built into other programs for accessibility. Convenience OCR has been around for a while, 10 years or so, in JAWS itself. Even now, I really think it's underutilized because a lot of people don't understand or use it or know of its existence. Unless a user encounters an inaccessible PDF or website often, they may not be in need of the tool or may not have enough experience to feel comfortable using it. OCR, again, as stated previously, will often start automatically when opening a PDF in Adobe if the accessibility settings are configured correctly or configured to do so. This is the built-in accessibility of Adobe, not a JAWS feature, although often JAWS will detect that the user is in a PDF and ask to start OCR. So there are accessibility features built into Adobe that can work with NVDA because it detects a screen reader being used. Sometimes a PDF seems to be inaccessible because it isn't tagged right, and that is nothing that you can do anything about, but you should contact the owner of that PDF and kind of ask them about it. Or another way is to say, do you have this in a Word format, if it's possible? So those are just some ideas about PDFs, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself and off topic, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. JAWS Convenient OCR. This is an overview. There are several different types of OCR that JAWS can perform. And here are the commands that you would press to get those. Once you've opened the OCR menu, you can do a D, which would recognize the current document if a PDF is open. A C, this will recognize the currently selected control. A lot of times this is a graphical button. It works in HTML, like a web page and stuff like that, not necessarily in a document, but more in an HTML website arena. W can be used mostly anywhere, and it recognizes the current application window that has focus. So it'll read something like if you have a setting open on the screen and it just isn't reading it for you, you can recognize the window. The screen with an S is very much the same. It recognizes the entire screen though, not just the window portion of the screen. It takes wider and more information. If you press Q after opening the OCR features, it will cancel the recognition. So if it's taking longer than you think it should, or you think there was an error, this will cancel it. What probably is the most useful is when you're in an OCR layer, which is, by the way, pressing the JAWS key plus space, O for OCR. If you press a question mark after that, JAWS will give you a brief message telling you the commands that are in the OCR layer. So it will read all of these to you, and you can proceed from there. Now we've talked about this briefly, but let's just kind of go a little bit more in depth on using the convenient OCR. To activate it, you're going to use JAWS plus space followed by O, and JAWS will say convenient OCR. And you can choose from one of the options on the previous page, or like I said, press the question mark. You can just kind of pick an option here. When the dialog box opens, because often that's what happens, is it will give you some options on how to begin the process. Just press enter and it'll begin to process things. Processing can take a few seconds to a few minutes, and it really depends on what you're asking JAWS to process. For controls or smaller items, JAWS will read what is detected. For larger items, like screens or windows, or even documents in some cases, JAWS will open an HTML window, and that will allow navigating by headings, tables, other elements, things like that. Again, this is something with experience and practice comes a better understanding and mastery of the skill. Let's talk a little bit about add-ons. Add-ons, there's two different kinds of things. There's NVDA has what are called add-ons, and JAWS has something called scripts. Right now, we're going to talk about NVDA add-ons. Add-ons can be a variety of things, from making NVDA more compatible with an existing application to giving NVDA itself more features. Add-ons are generally free unless they're paid voice synthesizer options. NVDA has a website, and there's several add-ons there. And because NVDA is an open source program, add-ons are developed by various members of the BVI community. Some people really get into this stuff. And though there are other sources, it's really the best practice and the safest to stick with NVDA add-ons that are from their store. There are reasons you want to do that. Partly is because you want to make sure that the code has been checked, that it won't make things harder for you later, all of those things. How would you get NVDA add-ons? Well, here's some links here. There's a link to an add-on section of the user guide in the PDF associated with this video, and that should give you some general instructions on getting, installing, and activating the add-ons that you do download and how that works. There's a link to the official add-on repository, which is the stable version. So there's two versions. The stable versions are versions that they are absolutely sure they're pretty much done being developed for the moment. And then there's an add-on repository of versions that are under development. If you're really a power user and you like playing with other people's scripts and seeing how they work, you can look at those as well. NVDAaddons.org is a good place to look as well. And Access World has an article here that is linked. That's a list of essential NVDA add-ons as of October of 2023. So these are good ones. A lot of times add-ons, by the way, will often, not always, but often mimic JAWS. So people see things that Freedom Scientific has added to the code in JAWS, and some people want to mimic that, and they create add-ons for NVDA. And then this is how you would get those. So scripts. JAWS has several scripts or programs that help it function better with other programs. This is very similar to the add-ons from NVDA. Some of the sites that are linked here offer paid scripts, while others are free downloads with directions on how to install. There are some places that literally offer scripting services where an individual or a company can hire a programmer to come in and create scripts to work with a specific piece of software. For example, there are some really good ones from Hartgen Consultancy, which I always say wrong. They have a script store, and they have scripts that make Teams work better with JAWS. I believe they have some other ones as well. There's Access World has an introduction to JAWS scripts, which is kind of a nice option if you're curious about how they work. It gives you kind of some ideas. The Snowman script page, no, that is not me, is another one. And there's one called Do It Blind. And those are the main ones that you see and encounter. If you do have questions about scripts and getting services, I'm sure that contacting Freedom Scientific is not a bad idea. They're usually pretty helpful, and they might have something that can give you some ideas on either script development, or they might have a resource that a script exists somewhere else. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this installment, and if you've watched all of it, I hope you enjoyed this series. Please feel free to leave us a comment, like, subscribe, all of that stuff that you're supposed to say at the end of a video. Just insert that here. Thanks so much and have a great day.